Good evening, fellow students. Today we're having a bit of a cultural lesson. We will be reading and analyzing the text John by John Ernest Greene. Now, John Ernest Greene was a very famous writer of his time, also famously an immortal. And I think that this text, despite its brevity, as you might call it, actually encapsulates so much more meaning into its words than you can at first see. So what I recommend is that you have your own copy of this text ready. Please do not pirate it, because that's illegal. So don't do that. This is copyright Green Bookshop 2020. So yeah, buy your text and make sure to have it handy so you can write down your own annotations as we go along. You might learn a whole new region of literature that you can learn just from this short text. But before we actually start reading, I would recommend you go to one of the handy websites I have listed in the description to just look at some context. So first of all, most importantly, Earth, because this is the planet on which the story takes place, and for all we know, John Ernest Greene was born here. He actually didn't ever say where he was born or when he was born. For all we know, he could have been born in the middle of nothingness. But this is important for the context of the story itself. Now, this is human history. I recommend you take a look at all of these sub sections individually, just so you're really sure you know everything about everything about human history, because that's also quite important, since the main character of our story is a human, in fact. This is an outline of all life forms, because in fact two of our main characters, both of them, are life forms in this story. Then the human, because John Ernest Greene is a human, and John, the main character of our story, is also a human. That's nice. Then plant, because our second character, which is the tree, is a plant. So you'll probably want to look through this, and tree as well. The bare minimum is to just look through these pages I've given you, but please feel free to go to different species of trees, just to make sure you're really informed before you start reading. This is the act of eating. You may be familiar with this actually, because you probably do it every day, and if you don't, you should go to a doctor. And the human digestive system as well. Make sure you know everything about this, all of the pharynxes and esophaguses. That's actually spelled wrong, it should be spelled with an O. Then the main character of our story is named John, so make sure you know everything about all the Johns in history. The COVID-19 pandemic is actually a really important theme to study, because John Ernest Greene actually wrote this text during the pandemic. And finally, the English language, because this text is written in English, so you need to make sure you know everything about it. And you can also go practice vocabulary and go to one of the recommended apps, such as Johnny G. And once you're done with that, once you really know everything about the English language and all of the other topics I have on these Wikipedia pages, then you can actually go on and go back to this video, and you can start dissecting it. So, John, a short story by John Ernest Greene. Now, just from the title here, we can infer a lot of information actually. First of all, that John is the same as John here. It's the same name as the actual author of the story. And from that we can infer that maybe this is sort of an autobiography of sorts, that John is looking back at his past and reflecting on it. Also, John is a really common name, it could be agreed so, and it's also an English name. So that might be like looking at the English public in general, instead of just a specific person. This might be a metaphor. Also, since John's name is in the very title, we can find out that the main character of the story, John, really likes attention and will get everywhere, even including the title. We can see the same in Macbeth. And finally, let's look at the sounds that the word John produces. Oh, what did I do? It's a weird program. It begins with a very strong J, and goes to an ominous O, and ends with a cunning N. John. As if one of his sides is very aggressive and wants to catch you, and N is like a tiger waiting in the bushes, ready to pounce on its prey. And this is the image of John that John Ernest Greene wants to create, from what I can tell. Now we can skim through these notes on the text and the second edition and whatever. You can read these actually. It's quite interesting stuff about how the book actually first got produced. But for now we'll just go straight to John, the story itself. So I'll start by reading the whole story, and then we'll go bit by bit, dissecting every single word. So, John eat tree. So let's start with the beginning here. John. Now we have already dissected the word John in the title, but we can infer a bit more if we just look at the structure and the fact that John is placed in the very beginning, and it's kind of an anadiplosis if you count the title as part of the text. Anadiplosis is when a sentence ends with one word and the next sentence begins with the same word. So for example, we will come to an end that will kill us all, something like that. So this repetition of the word John, it creates a sort of eerie effect, as if John was like a bell, like a drum sound in the distance, like an echo, sort of that. And it creates in us a sort of fear of John. Not to mention that he either takes up 1/3 of the text or one half if you also count the title, or even 3/4 if you also count the act of eating as part of John. So he obviously wants attention, and he's also very present. There's a lot of Johns in our world. Then the next word here is eat. Now, first of all, I'll look at the sounds that the word makes. So eat. It begins with a harsh E, and it ends with a sudden T, as if it was a trap that was closing in on you. Eat. You can imagine it as one of those creaky doors that slams behind you in a haunted house, like. And also it's the simple form of the verb eat. Not to mention that it's a simple verb in itself, eat. And I think this is used to make John appear as kind of a simple person, like a farmer with not much intellect, acting upon his desires rather than upon the greater good. And finally, you have the third word, tree. So it begins with a soft ch and r, and a slowly fading out e. Now, I would argue that this e isn't quite the same as this e. First of all, because it's ea over here, and here it's a double e. And second of all, because of just the sort of expression that it makes. Tree and eat is two different types of e. So tree fades out. It creates a feeling of peace and a kind of growth in it. And tree, and the E fades out, showing us that the tree is receding into itself. It's scared of John and being destroyed by him. And it's only 1/3 of the text, so it kind of gives us hope that the tree might actually survive, and that it might grow over John and defeat him, albeit not in a violent way, of course. And it's also a juxtaposition. And also the word tree here is a juxtaposition to John. Tree is a symbol of life, of hope, of growth, and John is the evil malevolent person trying to eat it for his own gain. Okay, so this was the analysis of the words themselves. Now we can look at the structure. So first of all, you have a full stop at the end. Now, this along with the fact that the sentence is a simple sentence, really makes it seem like John, it's further looking at John's simplicity. You know, he's using simple sentences, using simple forms of verbs, he's using very simple words in general. So he's not very intelligent. Also, the full stop at the end creates a finality to the piece. It makes us feel like the tree is eaten, it has been devoured, and there's no hope left. Also, a very interesting thing that John Ernest Greene did here is that eat and tree are almost like opposites in terms of sounds. Like eat, tree. You could see how they're reversed. And either this could mean that the tree is the opposite of eating, that growth is the opposite of devouring and consumption, which I believe to be the case, but you could also see that eating and tree are similar, in the sense that they have the same letters, and that would mean that eating is a necessary part of life. And there's just juxtaposition of eating to keep one alive, and eating to kill something else. And you could argue that John here isn't actually just trying to eat the tree for his own benefit. He's just trying to survive. And it's the vicious cycle of life and death, and the power of nature. And now we can look at the different purposes that the text could have. So this is clearly a work of fiction, although it could be argued that it's happening in real life. So one obvious purpose of this text could be that John Ernest Greene doesn't like vegans, and that eating trees, he doesn't condone that behavior. Another possible purpose is that he's angry at deforestation or obesity, as in John eating too much and trees getting destroyed. Another one could be hunger, and the world hunger, and John having to resort to eating trees, the very things that give life. And also this could seem like simply an analogy to the cycle of life and death and the power of nature. That's it for me. I'd be very glad to hear other interpretations of this text from you guys in the comments. Please buy this book. I think it's very much worth it, especially with all this pretext over here. John, a short story by John Ernest Greene. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you benefited from that.